My grandson, Hudson Locke, who's a junior at Southeast High School, is going to present our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you, Huddy. Hey, you know, when my grandma and I was a little kid like you, well, not a little kid, I was a kid like you, my grandma always called me by my cousin's name. And I swore when I had grandchildren I would never, ever, ever do that. My grandma was a glorious lady, good Christian lady. She got it mixed up, so I guess you got to give me that. So thank you, Hudson. You did a fabulous job. All right. Here we go. This first tractor that has our stars and stripes on it is owned by Tom Ward, a Fredonian who moved all the way to Iowa. And this tractor came from Fredonia, Kansas. It's a 1942, just as the war was getting started. Farm all M. And it's got this great big rack on it. They used to put straw and hay up with that big rack. They put it on big stacks or in a barn or whatever. And then a guy named Wally White, who did a lot of construction around here, he had that tractor for quite a while, and he did shingles and built buildings and used that big old lift to put the stuff up on the roof. And so it's really neat to have a tractor come back from Iowa that's fixed up in its prime, and they brought it all the way from Iowa to show it. So thank you, Tom. And it's driven by Evan. Ethan. All right, Ethan, fire it up. Let's go. They used this tractor 40 years ago to build pole barns. Dad used it for that. They also have an F12 with a hand lift on it. So Ethan, thank you very much for presenting the colors and bringing the tractor to town. You're a good man. Now if we can get this little 4x4 down here, I got a special man you want to meet in this 4x4. This man that's waving out this side of this little 4x4 is none other than Mr. Bill Heiss. And Mr. Bill Heiss is on the button this year, and he came through and said, my goodness, he didn't realize why everybody had his face on the button. Well, we understand why they have his face on the button, because he's a charter member of the Old Iron Club. He worked at the cement plant making cement things for 44 years and retired. He's now 95 years old, I do believe, and that's his bride, Rachel, sitting next to him in this 4x4. And get this, they have been married and in love for 76 years. Wow. And that smile that's on his face was on his face every day. And when you were greeted at this gate down here, you were greeted by that smile and that face. And if it didn't melt your heart, nothing would. But what a man, what a tribute, what a guy to be the guy that's first through this parade, Mr. Bill Heiss and his lovely, lovely bride, and Pat, who just happens to be a family member. She's driving, and it's a wonderful thing to have you here, Bill. Thank you for letting us put your face on that button. It'll be something we keep forever. And we'll keep you forever in our heart. We'll have you come back every 100 years, okay? Yeah. Give it up for Bill Heiss. Okay, this next tractor coming through is a 1952 John Deere 60. It's got little clamshell fenders on there, which is kind of unusual because most guys didn't put clamshell fenders on. They would just rather get all dirty. But Gavin bought this tractor over in Missouri a couple of years ago, and I went with him. We hauled it home, and he is now working on becoming a John Deere mechanic. And believe it or not, he likes to work on old two-cylinder tractors rather than those that have a computer on it, because nobody can figure out those, and he can figure out these. And it's a glorious thing to have him be able to do that. That's what's going to keep this thing going, is young people like Gavin Locke and the rest of you young people to keep Old Iron going. And he's one of the men that can do that. So thank you for bringing your 60 all the way over from Cherokee, Kansas. And that's my other grandson right there that I keep calling Hudson, his name. So those two are related. This little wheel horse that's coming down the line, it's a 1972 wheel horse. It's a C121. And I know those are kind of run-of-the-mill. Everybody has a wheel horse or whatever. But the neat thing about this little tractor, it was owned by Mr. Ted Myers of Fredonia. He's probably a distant relative of mine. But he kept that tractor in his yard out at the farm. And then when he retired, he came to town. He mowed his yard with that little tractor consistently until he was 95 years old. And Christian, who's also in John Deere School with Gavin, is riding this for Gavin. But that little tractor kind of has a good spot in all of our hearts, too, because it's a Fredonia tractor. So thank you, Christian, for driving it for us. Christian's in John Deere School, too. If he can't figure it out, it's because he knows all that about computers. Right? Yeah, there you go. John Holo's next tractor. John Hole the second, 1944 Farmall M. This tractor was his grandpa's tractor and was used on the farm several hundred acres north of Shaw, Kansas. Anybody know anything about Shaw, Kansas? That's where they made little tractors too in Shaw. It's used to pull down trees and push brush, heavy logs in the winter now. And that's why it has that manure bucket on there. And that's a trip bucket, right? So can you show us how it goes up and then you pull a lever? So he would scoop up the manure, and then when it gets up there so high, then he's going to pull a lever, and then he's going to put the manure in the manure spreader in a pile. If it had weight on it, it would flip right down. Now, if you think about it, 1944, what was happening in 1944, you young people? 1944?
D-Day. D-Day.
There was a little conflict going on, so it was tough to have a brand new tractor in 1944, so that's really special to have one that was hard to get in 1944. Thank you for bringing that over. Appreciate it. Now, Rex Crawford is driving this little cub of his, and it's quite fitting, 1949 Farmall Cub. And so that little cub has a wood belly mounted mower. Is it wood? Is that a wood, Rex? Is that a wood belly mower? Yeah. And so if you had a big farm, you didn't have all zero-turn mowers that took care of that. You had to put a wood belly mower on a farm-all cub, and you can mow all kinds of grass at your farm. And then he's got a little lister on the back, which is pretty cool. But those little tractors are awful hard to come by, and they're really a nice tractor to have still to this day. And Rex still has a lawn service, but he doesn't use that. He just drives that around to show off. So thank you, Rex. This is Tatum Voorhees. He belongs to the Voorhees family, and he's driving a 1968 Ford 80. And does the horn work on that thing, Tatum? Does the horn work? Well, toot it. Thank you. And who you got in the back? Right there behind you. Cade. That's right. Cade's riding around screaming for his life. All right, take off there, buddy. Those are kind of neat. They don't make Fords anymore like that. This is another Voorhees family tractor. 1959 Minneapolis Moline G6. You had to kind of know your Roman numerals. And Tom, he was a student of ours that we had, and he learned all about Roman numerals. It took him like 3 or 4 years in the 4th grade to get that done. Okay, 10 years in the 4th grade to get that done. But anyway, he finally got it. He wanted a 6, but he wanted Roman numerals. One of the founding members of the club, John Burrell, this is his. He ran the sawmill with it for years. It's a propane tractor. That's what that tank is up there. And it still sounds like it can pull like crazy. Can it? It can. 1959. Thank you very much. Keep bringing it around. Listen to that. That's just music to stereo right there. So from Newton is bringing up a D17 Alice Chalmers, a 1968 model D17. According to a lot of the collectors, D17 was one of the best tractors that Alice Chalmers ever produced. And they were tough. They were just big enough for the farms at that time. They pulled 3 bottoms real easy. A lot of people put 4 bottoms well on them. And he's got a loader on there that says Ford. So you probably had to make some little accommodations to get it to fit. But a real handy tractor that did everything on a lot of farms. Thank you for bringing it to me. This next tractor is Shane Newton's tractor. And I know this is the year of the case tractor, so it's kind of neat to have one of those really here at the 430 case. We had some of those in our neighborhood when I was a kid. 1963 was bought new by Frank Hare, and then the Berkey Felt Dairy acquired it, right? Is that right? And we have some connections with the Berkey Felt Dairy. Mrs. Berkey Felt took my wife to church, and she became a Christian because Mrs. Berkey Felt. Isn't that cool? I think that's cool. That deserves applause right there. Ha ha! Thank you for the way people treat each other. And when you have a tractor like that, you remember stuff like that. So thank you very much, Jay, for bringing that to Texas. That's really cool. This next tractor is a 1951 John Deere B, and it belongs to Mason Niesi. Now, there were like, I don't know how many, Scott, do you know how many Bs were made? There's been a boatload of Bs. I mean, it's one of the most manufactured John Deere tractors ever in the world, 200,000 or something. It's like way above. But the neat thing about this is not the tractor that the John Deere B, even though Mason does take good care of it. It's the young man that's sitting on the seat. He has two tractors, a B and a Mini. And how old are you, Mason? 14. Now we want to keep Mason around for a long time so you can keep coming back to this show and you can bring your grandkids back to this show and their grandkids back, because us old guys are going to be gone. And we need to have Mason keep that old B and those other things going. So that's why you're a blessing to be here. Thank you very much for bringing that to pass. Yeah, you've got an alternator on it, so it starts a lot easier. You're a smart man, too, you know that? Way smarter than your dad. I'm not kidding. $1954, John Deere 60. Byron Giffens owns this tractor, and if you know anything about Byron, he was instrumental in getting this whole thing started out here with the Vandevers and everybody. So it's neat to have one of his own tractors here. And I believe that, was that on the shingle machine all week? Just pop, pop, pop every time. Now, if you think about a tractor that was made in 1954, and you can do the math, figure out how old that is, and it still runs like it did in 1954. And the people driving it look exactly like they did in 1954. He was 2, but he matured fast. So thank you for bringing that to play. I wonder how many tractors that are that old are still going to be around 50, 60 years from now, 70 years from now. This next tractor belongs to Anthony Gonzalez, 1946 John Deere A, driven by Logan Brown. Now the neat thing about this is Anthony Gonzalez redid this tractor when he was in high school and with Byron Giffens' help. So he's the young man that's coming on further down, and Logan here, right? Logan's driving it for him, but to know that a young man put that tractor together from the ground up to make it go like it does today, that's a real neat thing. So thank you for driving it, Logan. Logan is training to be a steam engine engineer, right? So that's just not something you go up there and find out and do. You got to go to steam school and learn how to do that, because those things are interesting. So Logan is continuing on with his steam engines that are down the back corner where the sawmill is. Anthony, it's just like when you were a kid. This is Anthony Gonzalez who put that tractor together, and this tractor, obviously, the 1938 Unstyle A. It's got a Pfizer head in it, which makes it like more powerful. And if I heard Anthony say "what" from me in the classroom, if I had $1 for every time I would try and teach something and he'd say "what," I wouldn't be standing here. I'd be sitting here in my limo doing this. So you haven't changed a bit since you were 4. So whatever you do, don't change anymore. Keep saying "what," and I'll know who you are. Thank you for bringing that to town. That was good. Again, this is a young man south of town, Emmett Stapleford. Got this little tractor, Craftsman, and you start with stuff like this. If you think, well, you know, where's his, it's a 1990, which is pretty old, a Craftsman, which is pretty cool, the LT4000, probably mowed a lot of yards, and Emmett now is keeping that thing alive, aren't you? And just think, this is where you start, and then you get bigger and bigger and bigger, so we're glad you're on that today. Thanks for bringing it and driving it around for us. You keep it up. We'll be looking for whatever you bring next time. Remember, your dad has the checkbook, okay? All right. Oh boy, this is Daryl Donahue. Now notice, Daryl had to stand up. Can you imagine, just like Scott and I said, can you imagine spending a day on something like that? That would pop, make noise, rattle around, hard to steer. It probably had steel on the front, had fans on it that was hard to move. In fact, you could plow and get out off the plow and it would just walk along and you could walk along with it so you could get your back around. But that would shake you and rattle you and you couldn't hear. Yeah, that's why you have that furniture disease, you know it? When your chest falls into your drawers. Yeah, it just kind of shakes and settles down. Yeah, there you go, you got it. But 1930 John Deere GP. GP, they made it for 3 rows. That wasn't a successful deal. So it's really cool to put that tractor out here and let us see it because it worked for a bit, but people wanted 2 or 4. They didn't want 3 rows. And so those tractors that survive like that are a real pleasure to get to look at. So thank you, Daryl, for keeping that thing alive. Appreciate it. Now this truck is Thatcher Cox's 1950 Chevy 3500, and a lot of farmers hauled a lot of stuff to town in a truck like that. That's probably a 3/4 ton, I would suppose. Isn't it 3/4 ton, Patrick? And so you'd put a stock rack on there and it'd hold a couple cows. You put sideboards on it and you fill it up with wheat or corn or whatever and take it to town. And that was a big deal back in the 50s to have a truck take your stuff to town. You probably pull a trailer, but the trailers are what used to pull your stuff to the barn, and then when you got a truck like this, you were in hog heaven. So, thank you, Patrick. That's a classic. Jeff Cox is driving a 1954. He thinks. Minneapolis Moline. Now, if you pay attention to this tractor and look it over, if you know anything about metal and iron, it doesn't have a frame on it. They didn't set the engine in a frame because the engine had enough iron in it to hold that whole thing together. And so these tractors like this, that's why you see a lot of them, and a lot of guys use these for pulling, and they, like Kelly does over there, because they just don't die. They just keep on going. And it's amazing, and it's kind of sad that the Minneapolis Moline Company got absorbed and taken in by Flight and so forth later on. But these old tractors were the toughest tractors you could find on the farm. So thank you, and you don't have to keep it alive. It's going to keep it alive itself. So bring that to town every time. Thank you. Dick Freeman owns this 1917 Frick steam engine. It's 8.5 by 10. This engine was brand new. What? The boiler's brand new, that's what. He had to have the boiler refixed. It came out of Pennsylvania, is that right? Yep. And they used it in Pennsylvania to do a lot of sawmill stuff. Got it to Kansas, the Great Bend, and now he brings it over here, and it's a Frick from 1917. Now you do the math. 1917 would be how old? Anybody know off the top of your head? 108 years. Oh, that machine's 108 years, and it still goes. It operated the sawmill down there all week for the kids and everything. And listen to it. Isn't that great? That's why they put a whistle on it so they could wake you up. So thank you for bringing that along, and those are very expensive machines. That's amazing. Thank you, guys. That steam engine down there, if you wanted to ever find one kind of like it, you'd have to have over $100,000 in your pocket to even start, probably. A one that runs, and then if you want to fix it, then you got to go to steam school to learn how to run it. This is Chris LeBron, right? And Chris has a 1952 Model B. That little tractor is like 73 years old, isn't it? And notice that they were really smart back in those days, because they knew people didn't like to look around, they'd like to look ahead. So they looked straight ahead, and they could look straight down the road, so you could cultivate, keep the thing straight, not plow out the corn. So everything is on this side of the engine and hood, so you could not cultivate the corn. You could cultivate the weeds. So that's why it sits over here to the side. Little B was the staple of a lot of tractors right here in this neighborhood. I remember several of them when I was a kid. Thank you for bringing that up. Next tractor is Johnny X tractor, and it is an I-4, which means it's an industrial tractor. Mitch is driving, that's Johnny's son, and he's got a couple of co-pilots there that are more beautiful than he'll ever be. But anyway, this little tractor here, being an I-4, meant it was, and if you look at the tires, they're kind of industrial type tires. This was a standard tractor, which meant you couldn't use it, you couldn't put it down a row. It wasn't used for farm purposes necessarily unless it was wheat. But the I meant industrial, so it's probably used on road. It probably pulled a little grader or something, a scraper or sheep's foot or something like that. And so these tractors were made a little tougher and used a lot harder. And so to have one still around, and Mitch works on them and he restores them, so he can tell you what it's like on the inside of one of these. They really worked those hard and they survived. That was the neat part about those little internationals like that. So that's an industrial model international. Makes the road smooth. Thank you, sir. And notice I didn't even tease you about what you did in the boiler room when you were a kid. All right, next one, Mitch. Roy. Mitch and Roy Heck. 1944 Farm All In. Remember the Farm All In that went through early? Johnny Hall. Thank you. Is that John? This is the propane. So that means that big tank that's up there is liquid petroleum, which was really cheap back in the old days. And it kind of cut the power down on some of them. Maybe a few horsepower less than a gas-powered M, and they did make an MD, which was a diesel. But if you were thinking economics, and when you tear into one of these, if you get a propane and you want to restore it, the engine's really clean because that's a real clean fuel. And so that's a unique tractor. Even though there were some around here, the propane was something that was out in the west part of the state too, because they have a lot of it in the ground. So it's really neat to see a propane tractor here. Thank you. This is the Johnny X tractor, 1954 Farmall Super C. Dean Brennan is driving it, and when you see the Super on there, they changed the decals a little bit. Maybe increase the capacity of the engine, bored it out or whatever. Did something with the hydraulics. So you'll see a C that looks like that, and then you see a Super C, which means they upgraded it. So this is an upgrade in 1954. This was a deluxe model for a lot of tractors, or a lot of families around here that had a tractor like that and saw them on the hay rake. That was the primary tractor for a lot of families. Even though it's nice and small, think about the acreage we have now and a farm with something like that. That was your big tractor, maybe your only tractor. Thank you, sir, for bringing that up. Andy Beach? Mike? Beach. Mike. Randy's driving Johnny X tractor, 1963 Farmall 560. Now, you see a lot of these that are still pulling. This is diesel, I do believe. And Farmall at that time, or International Harbor, was trying to catch up with John Deere and so forth. But John Deere came out with a 4010, and they hurried and made this tractor. And it's a good tractor, but they messed up and they made the rear end a little too light. And so they had to recall a bunch of these because the engine was too powerful and tear out the rear end. And so they recalled a bunch of them, but after they did that, and then from then on, they tried to catch up with John Deere. But this tractor has been accused of being the tractor that kind of slowed them and put them in second place behind John Deere. But I thought it was pretty cool because I worked for Joe Armstrong Equipment and set up tractors and set up stuff like that when I was in high school. And always loved driving that 560. Even did on the farm for a guy. They were the best tractor to drive. Comfortable, had that long hood out there. You could see forever. So it was a good, powerful tractor after they put that rear end in to make it better. That's got a good one, doesn't it? Good rear end. Keep it going. I think both of these tractors, in fact, all three of these are coming up. If you look at the back end of these, they have something called a fast hitch. A lot of tractors in those days, you just pulled it, had a trip plow or something, you just had a drawbar. Then the 3-point came along with the Ferguson system, and then International had this. Alice Chalmers had a snap coupler. This is Johnny X, 1952 Farmall 230. It's in the same family as the C. So if you look at it, it looks kind of like that one in front of that was just a newer version, so they just kept upgrading and putting a little more power. And they put hydraulics on it and probably had a fast hitch on it. I'm not sure, I can't see. What do you think, Scott? Does that have a fast hitch on it, Robert? Can't tell. Slide it up here, boys. Riker, slide it on up here. Let's take a look. Yeah, I think it does. I thought it was a pretty good system myself to hook the implements up, but Farmall and all like that, Alice Chalmers, if you had that hitch, you had to buy their equipment. And so it had two prongs on the plow, the cultivator, disc, whatever, and it would slide right in and snap in there. I thought that was ingenious. That was great. But then they all went to 3-point hitches, and now that's what they have now. So look at the back of those three, and you can see that revolutionary 2-point hitch, or called the fast hitch. Thank you, sir. Keep it going. This is Johnny X tractor, 1962. Farmall 460. Now the 460 looked like the 560. This was its little brother. It has a, Kenny's driving this one, right, Kenny? Are you Kenny? Okay. And the 460 was one that would probably pull 3 to 4 plows is what they rated it. Most farmers around here would pull 3 with it. The 560 would pull 4. So it was like its little brother. But this is a gas tractor. That was a diesel that was ahead of it, even though they look quite a bit alike. And still a fabulous tractor. I always like the looks of those, and they just look like a tractor should look. So thank you for bringing it along. Now, and for you tractor people, you say, well, this is an F20. Well, there's a whole bunch of F20s around, but if you look carefully, this one's a little different. First of all, it's owned by Charlie Bright. Charlie Bright is 90 years old. Are you Charlie Bright? You don't look a day over 57. All right. Charlie Bright, F20, narrated, which means the back end from the back axle, was close. So what was the purpose of that, Charlie? What do you think? But the other farmhouse you could cultivate with it because they were set up in 40-inch rows, right? So you didn't have to do anything. But this one has a narrow tread. I don't know the specifics of this tractor, but this tractor is a narrow tread which makes it really rare. So you don't see these every day. If you look and see this, all the sheet metal on the outside and all, this is kind of an unstyled version. But the farm model was what made, it was an iconic tractor, revolutionized agriculture, did a lot of things. That's what made Farm Model and International Harvester the #1 farm machinery dealer in the world at that time, because they did a lot of things right, and this is one of the things that they did right. F20. Thank you for bringing that rare tractor to town. You don't see those all the time. So if you know anything about tractors, take a look at that one. That one's cool. He brings that tractor clear down to Pawnee, Scott says. So that tractor gets to be seen by a lot of folks. Ali Massey is driving Mason's tractor. Remember that young man that was 14 that had the John Deere B? This is his U, 1950, Minneapolis U. I believe this was the one that Studebaker had. Mr. Studebaker, right? And Mr. Studebaker lived over yonder. He farmed with this tractor. Mason bought it. Mason keeps it alive, and you get to drive it. So it's really a cool tractor to get to see because that's a Fredonia, Kansas, Wilson County tractor that did a lot of work for a lot of folks, making a lot of money, not so much in one big pile. Little by little, it did a lot of things. Thank you for bringing that over. 3-bottom plow, by the way. Shannon Tillman, the owner of a 1955 Oliver Super 77. My Uncle Will had Oliver Super 77. He had some 88s and so forth. And if you know anything about my Uncle Will Coach, he was a rough, big, husky man. When he started farming with mules, you wouldn't want to be one of his mules because he would work you to death. And so when he traded the mules in and got a tractor like this one, he worked it day and night. And guess what? They held up. He put him through all kinds of abuse. So the iron that's in that, 1955, and it still looks like that, that's why Oliver should still be around. It's the management that messed everything up. So those are tractors that you need to really appreciate because they could be really work hard, and they just kept on going, just like those mules. So thank you. Anthony, how do you say your last name? Pagay? Pagay. I want to call it right. I got to do a wedding here in a little bit. I'm going to turn this over to Scott, but I want to talk about this tractor. Unstyled John Deere B, 1936. Now, John Deere B had all those levers. Does that have a high and low on it? Yeah. And it's interesting, they didn't put knobs on it. I guess they figured you were smart enough to know what lever it is, and the knob would just fall off. So they just made a lever. The other thing about that tractor, a lot of kids grew up driving a tractor like that for their dad starting about 5 years of age. Now my question is, would you put your kid 5 years old right now on a tractor like that, send them to the field, and say, this half, and I'll come back and get you? How many would do that? He'd have to give up his cell phone, and then he'd cry like a little girl. So, that's what's neat about these old tractors is a lot of kids started out, and I'm sorry, some of them did get hurt from time to time. But now we keep them so safe they can't even stub their toe, and we sue the school for it. But anyway, back then, Dad said keep your fingers out of that. Don't touch that flywheel that's spinning over there. And guess what you did? You did it. Because you trusted Dad, and Dad trusted you, and if you didn't, you ended up with the Board of Education, right? So thank you for showing that off. That's a pretty cool tractor right there. Plus it had a little spring in the seat, so your back wasn't quite as tired. Yeah. So guys like Anthony, if you talk to him, he'll probably say, huh? Because he can't hear over that shot that comes out of that muffler all the time. All right, I'm going to let Scott take over. Scott is the announcer down at Pawnee, and he'll do a better job than I'll ever think about. So let Scott do the talking, and I got to go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. My name's Scott News. I'm out of Pawnee, Oklahoma. This is probably my favorite tractor right here. This is owned by Corey Tarp. This is about a 1928 to 1930 Model 60 Caterpillar. This thing is the workhorse. This is a tractor that dug all the ditches, paved all the roads, anything that needed to be pulled and dug, and this is the tractor that did it. This is an amazing piece of equipment. You get close enough, you'll see the flywheel spinning, and you'll see that you ever see it's parked back over here on the other edge of the ground, you'll notice have holes in the flywheel. You put about a 2.5 foot rod in that hole and you pull it over by hand to start it. But Corey, thank you for bringing that through. Is it running better than yesterday? Got her fixed. Next we have a tractor owned by Corey Thorpe. This is a 1955 John Deere 60. It's driven by his daughter. And she's operating this. She loves this tractor because it's a good power steering. It's got that beautiful twin engine sound on it. Thank you so much for bringing that through. I appreciate it. I was watching you driving around last night. You do a good job. Next we have another John Deere coming through. This John Deere B. It's a very common tractor in this part of Kansas. They're all over the nation. Also a row crop tractor. It's got the tricycle front end. It's owned by Corey Tharp here in Fredonia. This is a 1937 John Deere B. And good operator on this tractor. Another twin cylinder. Again, this tractor is operated, or it started by rotating the flywheel on the opposite side of where I am. And you grab hold of that thing, spin it over, and not hard, just let the compression and the magneto do all the work, and it'll sit there and run. Spoked wheels,
This is a very rare tractor to still have all the spokes on the front and rear tires. Thank you for bringing that through. This tractor is also owned by Corey Clark. This is 1932 John Deere D. And this is the most common tractor that I remember growing up, also with the spoke wheels. I grew up near Prairie, Kansas, Kingman, Kansas area, Reno County. You can hear this tractor for over a mile away when you're pulling that three-bottom plow right after harvest. Thank you. Here with me I have Robert Mars. Robert is from Sand Springs, Oklahoma. Robert is the president of the Oklahoma Steam Threshing and Gas Engine Association here in Pawnee. Well, it's not here. I did that by accident. In Pawnee, Oklahoma. I do a lot of announcing at the Parade of Power at the Pawnee show, so if anybody comes, we are welcoming everybody to come down. First full weekend of May is our show. Here we have Eric Studebaker, driven by Ellen and Allie Studebaker. It's a 1961. It's all original Cub Cadet. And we have Sylvie Green in a original international dump trailer. Just don't dump her out. Just keep that child safe in there. Thank you so much. Nice, quiet, why those Cub Cadets are just so special. Next we have Eli Studebaker operating this 1966 Cub Cadet Model 123. It's owned by Joe Armstrong. And Eric Studebaker owns this. It's driven by Mr. Eli Studebaker. It's got an attachment of a rotor tiller hanging off the back end to do a lot of heavy work out in his gardens. If you get a little farther south, you'll use that to try to mix up some of that Oklahoma clay. But up here where we have this good loam soil, it's going to make a beautiful garden. Thank you, Eli. Next we have Elliot. Are you Elliot? All right. This is owned by Elliot Studebaker. This is a 1971 Cub Cadet, and he converted it to an electric drive. Oh, I see the big electric motor on there. No wonder it's so quiet. That's a good job. You have to charge it very often? Yeah, I bet so. Good job on that. Got the good tires on the back end. Nice quiet runner. Electric drive. First one I've ever seen. Cub Cadet International. Next we have, this is owned by Eric Studebaker. It's driven by Reverend Green. It's 1974 on 1450 International Cub Cadet. It's got a little land leveler attached to it to keep the hold of make that ground nice and level when you're taking care of your yard and your garden. I appreciate it, Reverend. Thank you for bringing that through. And we got the honor here of Eric Studebaker. Oh, this is a real special model. This is an articulated 4x4 Cub Cadet, custom built. Let me see how it articulates. Can you show everybody? There you go. That's special. Good job on that. That's very remarkable build. It's a model 1650 hydrostatic international Cub Cadet. The last tractor we have come through today, the 1936 John Deere Model A. This is Daryl Donahue on his A. And this tractor is still in its working clothes because he is still using it for rake hay, drill seed, and run of brush hog. It has rear spoke wheels, probably originally had spoke wheels on the front. A lot smoother than that steel wheel that you drove through. Oh yeah, it's like sitting in a Barkley. Oh my gosh, look at that. He's going to take a nap. Again, these tractors, hand pulled over the flywheel on the right-hand side of the tractor. You didn't spin them, you just pulled it up to compression and let it break over the top and let the magneto do its work. And he's going to show how this thing will turn on a dime. I love the sound of the John Deere twin. Daryl, thank you for keeping the tractor in its working clothes. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here for the Parade of Power. We still have a lot of vendors out here. The flea market is at the end of the area where most of the parking is. We've got a lot of good things to choose from various different vendors for your food. Ice cream. Who likes ice cream? Everybody likes ice cream. So I appreciate you guys being here, and we'll be around in a year, almost a little bit less. Thank you for coming out.